Hi everyone. Hello. It's been quite some time since I last saw you all. And so I really hope that you're doing okay there. We will be seeing each other soon, and I look forward to that. Right. So let's talk about what you're going to learn today. Today, for this lesson, we're doing something dramatic, literally. We're going back about 2,500 years to ancient Greece, where theater wasn't just entertainment, it was almost like a religious experience or a civic duty, but also a collective emotional workout. Huh? Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Miss Alia, ancient stuff is boring. Okay, I hear you guys, but imagine this. Imagine, close your eyes, okay? Imagine that you're sitting in an outdoor amphitheater that fits around 10,000 to 15,000 people. The sun is setting. You're surrounded by strangers and friends, and everyone's about to watch a story so intense that people will cry, gasp, and maybe even question their entire existence by the end. So that's Greek theater for you. And that's what we're diving into today. And, we're going to talk about Oedipus Rex. So, we're going to talk about a guy who accidentally married his mother. So, let's go. Okay, Greek gods and goddesses. Before we get to the play, we need to understand the world that these people lived in. The Greeks, they didn't just believe in their gods, they performed them. Gods and goddesses weren't distant, abstract concepts, but they were close to them. They showed up in stories, in rituals, and in festivals. They were messy, they were jealous, they were vengeful, and they were also loving. Basically, very human, but with superpowers. All right? Think of it like how we binge watch Marvel movies today. The Greeks had their own universe of characters. So, for example, they have gods and goddesses like Zeus, the more famous ones, Apollo, Athena, and their stories got retold and reshaped constantly. And drama was one of the ways these stories stayed alive, right? So just have a look at this map. Choo-doo. So you see Athens there. Okay, so next slide. Origin of Greek theater. It began thousands of years ago as dances and songs performed to honor the gods, Dionysus, god of wine and procreation. And this seemed to be the subject of many of these early dramas. Okay, right. Um, Greek theater didn't start with someone saying, "Hey guys, let's write a play." No, that's not how that happened. It grew out of something much older, and it's called dithyrambs. Dithyrambs, which were basically these wild choral songs and dances performed to honor Dionysus, the god of wine. It's very on brand for a god who represents both ecstasy and destruction, right? The earliest performances were about procreation, nature cycles, and those strange magical moments when gods supposedly spoke directly to humans. And then around 534 BC, someone, this guy named Thespis, did something revolutionary. What did he do? He stepped out of the chorus and spoke as a character. Just one person pretending to be someone else in front of everyone. That was the birth of the actor. And yes, that's why we call actors thespians today. You're welcome for that dinner party fact. I don't know. I remember this one Indonesian actress who wrote on her Instagram handle, thespian. And I just saw, what's thespian? Now I know, and now you know that thespian is a more fancy way of saying that, actor. Okay, and this all came from the dude Thespis. Okay, um, I'm sorry. Okay, so everything important in ancient Greece actually happened outdoors, and drama was no exception. They would have 3 week long festivals every single year dedicated to theatrical performances. So they would have one in March, another in January, and another at varying times throughout the year. And it could be moving around the calendar. And these weren't optional fun activities. The city state actually funded them. Okay, the city state funded these performances. Citizens attended them. It was like national service, but for your soul. And the stories that they dramatized, the Greek myths, their were about the Greek myths, about their own history and the things that make them them. And that's why it feels a bit like national service. It feels like it's a civic duty, if you know what I mean. If you understand why I said the things that I said in the beginning. I don't know. Would you like that? Would you like it if our government funds things like this and we need to watch it? I don't know. Think about it. Let's think about it. Think about it. So, have you thought about it? I know I gave you such a short time to think about it, but yeah, personally, would I want that? I would love that actually. But thinking about having to sit in an amphitheater of about with 15,000 other people, I don't think I like that. I don't know. It's like going to a Taylor Swift concert 3 times a year. But the thing is, it's not Taylor Swift. Okay, also, I'm just using Taylor Swift because she's the only singer that I can think of at the moment that can really get a huge crowd, if you know what I mean. Um, Not personal preference. Sorry, guys. Okay, but anyway, I guess it would be fun, right, to have that. But if it becomes compulsory, not so much. But I feel like it's also like a good thing, a good way to connect as human being, living in one community. I guess it connects you to this one similarity. You're watching something and feeling emotions through one medium. And I guess that makes it a more human experience. It just makes you closer to others. I don't know. Okay, now let's talk about the physical structure of theater. We've gone through this in class. If you remember, we did that activity. Um, we didn't. I mean, we talked about different kinds of stages, right? But we did cover amphitheater. Okay, the theater where Oedipus Rex would have been performed would be massive because, like I said, at least 15,000 people in one space. And here's the thing, there were no microphones. They did not invite microphones then. Okay? So no speakers, no lighting design, just pure human voice and architecture that was designed to carry it. So that's why the physical structure of theater was really important. It was supposed to help elevate the voice, you know. So the amphitheater, if you remember, was roundish, and you can have a look at the illustration there on the slide. The amphitheater was roundish, it was semicircular with tiered seating rising up. The acoustics, you can imagine, right? The acoustics had to be amazing. Okay, like had to be incredible because people in the very back, the cheap seats, still needed to hear every word. They had to make sure that, right? And because of this, playwrights wrote in a very particular way. The characters, they actually had to explain the setting out loud. They also had to describe what was happening. There was no set in the modern sense. No props, no realistic props. No, it's just the actors. Okay, just words, masks, and the audience's imagination, which honestly is pretty powerful. When you think about it, it's like a stripped down performance. Where you just rely on what's that. Okay, we've talked about the physical structure. Now on to the actors, the Greek thespian. Here's something that might surprise you. Only three actors could appear on stage at any one time, but there were way more than three characters in this place. So what happens? Like, what about the other actors? The same actors would switch costumes, switch masks, and play multiple roles. The mask was important. It was everything. It wasn't just face covering. It was the character's identity. So the mask would show emotion, social class, age, even profession, right? The mask also had exaggerated features. Why? Because if you're watching a theater, you want to make sure that the people way back there could see the expression. So that's why it's exaggerated. Okay. Not only that, the mask also had a kind of mouthpiece that helped the actors to project their voice. So if you were sitting in the back row, you could still see that this character was angry or old or king just from the mask shape. And when I say that there was a mouthpiece, I, I mean that in a way that it's part of the way it's constructed. It helps with the echo. What about the costumes? So the costumes were oversized, padded, even elevated to make actors appear larger than life because these people, they weren't supposed to look like real people. They were archetypes. They were mythic figures. They were gods and goddesses. They shouldn't look like human, although they might have human characteristics, but they weren't supposed to be humans. And so that's why their costumes were deliberately oversized. Okay? And you needed to feel their presence even from far away. Interesting, right? Okay, those are just like, sorry. So those are just illustrations, illustrative for illustrative purposes. Right. So now we need to get a bit theoretical, but I'm hoping to make this palatable for you. Right. Enter Aristotle. You've heard of him, right? A philosopher, also a polymath, and a guy who basically invented literary criticism. In his work, poetics, he tried to figure out, what makes tragedy work? Why do we willingly watch terrible things happen to people and somehow feel better afterwards? Right. So Aristotle, he came up with seven key elements, and I'm going to walk you through them. All right. So number one, he says it's because it's based on past events that are familiar to the audience in relation to the Greeks. The Greeks already knew the Oedipus myth. The pleasure wasn't in what happens next, but in how it's told. Second, the main protagonist of noble status or birth. Oedipus is a king, and this matters because, sorry, I had to um, pause for a bit then. Okay, anyway, so Oedipus is a king, and this matters because their downfall is caused by a character flaw. So we need to see that even the great, the powerful, the privileged are vulnerable. And so their fall, people want to see that their fall is their own doing, at least partly. Number four, we still sympathize with them. And despite the flaw, we care. We don't think good riddance. We think, oh no, oh dear, you know? And number five, they gain self knowledge through their fall. So the suffering teaches them something. There's a sort of wisdom, a terrible one. There's a terrible wisdom in their ruin. Number six, the plot unfolds in one place in about a day. The unities will come back to tight, concentrated, and relentless. And then, through all these elements, we then feel catharsis. Catharsis, catharsis. Is it catharsis? I think catharsis. Again, please check. Okay, catharsis, and this is a big one. All right, the audience, after going through the story, the narrative, watching and stuff, the audience experiences a release, a cleansing of pent up emotions, fear, maybe through fear and pity specifically, and we will unpack this properly in a minute. But anyway, so these seven elements are the things that make up Greek tragedy. Okay? Okay. So the structure of most Greek tragedies presents a tight formal arrangement of parts. It's almost like an architectural structure. So think of it like a song with verses and a chorus. Can like when you listen to song, there's verses and then you have the chorus. So you have the prologue, which is the opening scene, and where everything is set up. Perhaps you get to know some characters or things like that, and then you have the parodos, parodos, where the chorus enters and they sing their first lyric song. And you also have alternating scenes and choral odes, which consists of dialogues between characters, and then the chorus reflects on it in song and dance. And then you have the exodus, which is the concluding scene and the final exit. So this whole rhythm, action, reflection, creates a kind of breathing pattern. The play moves forward, and then the chorus pulls back and asks, "Okay, let's unpack this. What does this mean? How should we feel?" Okay, and so this is also something that's I'd say exclusive to Greek tragedy. Moving on to the next thing that we're going to talk about. Oh, really, really, I would say important Greek dramatic terms. First up, we have anagnorisis. Guys, seriously, let's try to remember these things. I have been teaching this for quite some time. Well, at least the last time I taught drama was what I think I mentioned this before. Um, 4, 5 years ago, maybe. Anyway, every single time I teach it, I still forget how to say it. Okay, so apologies, bear with me. Okay. Focus. So, anagnorisis. This is the moment of startling discovery. It's the aha moment, or more often, the oh no moment. This is when a character finally sees the truth, maybe about who they are or what they've done. Okay, a process where things are unraveled. Yeah. Okay. So, thinking about Oedipus Rex. So maybe you can think about a scene where I don't know. Okay, we'll get there. But okay, imagine realizing something so fundamental, so devastating that your entire identity shatters in an instant. That's anagnorisis. It's not just learning something new, it's recognition in the deepest sense. Like you finally realize and see what was always there, but you were blind to. Like it was just there. Okay, and I think you can think of. I think you can recall which scene in Oedipus talks about this. We also have catharsis. This is probably one of the most debated word in all of theater theory, and it's because Aristotle didn't exactly give us a clear definition of what catharsis is. But here's how I understand it and how I think it works for the audience. So Aristotle, he said that tragedy tragedy purges the audience of disturbing emotions. You know, it cleanses, it purges the audience of disturbing emotions such as fear and pity. But what does it actually mean? I think that there might be two ways catharsis happens. Okay, for example, first you watch Oedipus's downfall and you resolve. You think, I okay, I think I will avoid the kind of pride, the kind of blindness that destroyed him. And so the play then becomes a warning. You leave the theater morally alert, intellectually sharpened. You are reflective and more aware. Secondly, um, the second way that a catharsis can happen, it could happen in a more subtle way. It's when you transfer your own fear and pity onto the character. You sympathize with the character. You feel it for him through him. And in doing so, you empty yourself of emotions you've been carrying around without realizing. It's therapeutic and it's collective therapy. Imagine 15,000 people having the same emotional release at the same time. And I think that's something that's incredibly powerful. And I'm also trying to think about, like, if you've been to concerts, right, and you watch a concert, your favorite singer performing, and you feel this emotion, and sometimes people cry watching perhaps an an emotional performance, and people cry collectively. And so, that's collective therapy. It's purging. You might have some feelings apa ni, hidden, or just like um, suppressed, suppressed feelings or emotions, things that you did not realize you had in you. And so that becomes like a button, like a chance for you to let it out. Okay. So the Greeks believed that just as ritual purification allowed a polluted person to rejoin the community, theatrical catharsis bound the audiences closer together through this experience. It's that shared vulnerability, shared recognition, and that's the social function of tragedy. It feels like, yeah, it really feels like therapy, but you do it in a collective way. But you feel it individually, but also like collectively. I think it's kind of clever in a way. And I guess it works. It worked back then. hmm Next one. Okay, we talked about this. I covered this as well. Oh yeah, I talked about this. Hold on. Okay, let's talk about masks. I want you to really think about what a mask does. So, what does it do? It hides the actor's face, yes, but it also reveals. It reveals emotion, status. It's a paradox. Why? Because the mask makes the character universal. So you can't see the actor's individual features. So the character becomes everyone. Although, it's debatable because people don't really look like the mask. But you know what I mean? It's actually just trying to convey that message that anyone could be behind that mask. Mm. And that mouth device is pure engineering genius. Remember I told you about they didn't have any like microphones, but the mask amplifies. It turns the human body into a tool for storytelling at scale. So I don't actually have like a photo of it. Okay, but about the photo of the mouthpiece. But you can look at this. I'm gonna give you a few seconds to just go through it. I mean, you can always pause if you need more time. Look at it because I would love for you to be creating masks in our next class. You look forward to that as well. Look at it. Look at the emotions. Some look furious. Some look. I mean, there's one smiling, a lot of masks that look surprised or maybe shocked, fear, in fear. I don't know. I'm just looking at them. So, can you see how exaggerated the faces are? hmm Moving on, let's talk about chorus, which is also an important component in Greek tragedy. Now, that's an example of a chorus, right? Pay attention to the mask. When I say pay attention, I just want you to, pause and just have a look at how the chorus is constructed and how you might see it in a Greek tragedy performance. I think the chorus is maybe one of the hardest thing for modern audiences to get because we don't really have an equivalent in contemporary times. Chorus, they're not they're not just background singers and they're not just narrators. They reflect a collective consciousness. So in Sophocles specifically, the chorus does six things. Sorry, yeah, it does six things. It explains the action, especially for those back row folks because they might be missing things because they're at the back and um, the chorus also interprets the action. It tries to connect things together, like maybe connect what's happening to the state law or the law of the Olympian gods. They also do foreshadowing work where they often hint at what's coming, keeping the audience's eyes open. Um, they might also help with, building tension through foreshadowing. The chorus also act as a character, and they sometimes also they interact directly with the protagonists, the main characters. Yes, they also sing and dance. They provide the aesthetic, the emotional layer, the emotional texture of the play. And they also give the author's view. And so Sophocles can speak through the chorus without breaking the fiction. So he doesn't have to break the fourth wall, right? He just uses it, meaning like Sophocles doesn't have to go up to the stage and tell people like, okay, guys, the moral of the story is no, no, no. He doesn't have to do that. He just remains the coherency through the chorus. And you could say that a chorus is like the soundtrack of a film. So yeah, it's like it's like a soundtrack of a film, or those texts you see where they tell you 3 years earlier, based on true events, 10 years later, these things. So they modulate your emotional response. They ask the questions you as an audience member are probably thinking, but they also give you information as well. um, so they are like the bridge between the play and the spectator. It builds they bridge the gap. Next element commonly found in Greek tragedy is dramatic irony, and I think this is where Greek tragedy gets delicious. And this is when, okay, what's dramatic irony? Dramatic irony is when audience knows something that the character doesn't. And in Oedipus Rex, the dramatic irony is almost unbearable. If you've read it, and I believe you have, well done, guys. We know from the very beginning that, hold on, I need to, sorry, I just had to hiccup. Okay. Okay, so we know from the very beginning that Oedipus has killed his father and married his mother. We know that, right? We know that before he knew that. He doesn't know that. So every time he vows to find the murderer of Laius, every time he curses the killer, and every time he boasts about his own cleverness and insight, we are just there squirming. Because we know that he's actually cursing himself, right? But we can't tell him, right? So there's a gap. The gap between the character, sorry, the gap between what the character understands and what the audience understands creates this incredible tension. This irony. It's not just suspense. It's almost like it's unbearable. It's actually painful, and that pain is part of what makes the catharsis, that purging, so intense when it finally arrives. Like you're like, we know something that you don't know, but like, we can't really do anything about it. We can't tell you, and here you are being so boastful about things, and then finally when he knows, you're just like, like you pity him, but at the you're like, with a sense of release. So dramatic irony is something that you find often in Greek tragedy. Well, let's keep this because I talked about this. Okay, next one. Next element would be Hamartia. Hamartia, honestly, Hamartia gets mistranslated quite often. People say it means a tragic flaw, like one single bad quality. So, for example, okay, Oedipus's um, one tragic flaw is that he's too proud, or he's too angry, or too stubborn. But actually, Hamartia is more nuanced than that. Okay, it's deeper than that. And the word hamartia actually it comes from the Greek word hamartanin. Oh gosh, I'm sorry if I don't know how to say it. Okay, which means to err. Okay, or to make a mistake, to miss the mark. It's not necessarily a moral failing, but it's a mistake. Like you do it, it's a mistake. It's not intended. It's a mistake. It's a misjudgment, an error made in ignorance. Hmm. And so, because of that, if you think about it, Oedipus's hamartia, Oedipus's tragic flaw, isn't just pride. It's like you're reducing it to just one thing. But in actuality, his tragic flaw is his determination to know, to solve, to control, which ironically are also his greatest strengths. He's a brilliant king. We know that. He is a savior of Thebes. Like he did a great job as a king, I think, right? He was a man of action and intellect, but that same drive to uncover the truth, when applied to finding out about his own identity, those things were the things that destroyed him. And this is what makes Greek tragedy so unsettling. It's because the qualities we admire most can also be our undoing. You know how like people say that, mm, how do I say it? Like like I'm basically just repeating like your best trait could also be your worst trait, and your worst trait could potentially also be your best trait. So that's why things you need to be moderate in everything that you do, right? Okay, but I think this is what's great about the Greek tragedy. It's because it's so human. Okay, although we have the gods and goddesses as the characters, it's so human. Sometimes it's our in our human nature that we sometimes want to know things, we want to solve things, we want to control things, but these things we are these things are beyond us. Sometimes things are beyond our control, right? And perhaps when thinking about Oedipus, you could probably sympathize with him as well because we're actually just like him. We share the same tragic flaws, right? Okay, next one. Hubris. Hubris or hubris? I think hubris. Hubris. Kenapa guna suara macam tu? I have no idea. Okay, so then this brings us to hubris, which means um, a great pride or arrogant overconfidence. Um, for in Greek theater, hubris was dangerous, not because it made you dislikable, but because it made you unsafe. So if you place too much emphasis on your own individual will, you downplay the will of the community, the state, the gods. So you act rashly. You refuse wise counsel. You think you're above the laws that bind everyone else. So Oedipus Rex is Oedipus is hubristic because when he dismisses Tiresias and or when he accuses Creon of conspiracy, or when he's so certain that he knows better than everyone else, that's that's his hubris, his character flaw. That that is what do you say? That's his great pride because of he was just too prideful because he thought that he was above everything and everyone else, right? And he was right though. He was right about so many things. He did solve the riddle of these things, and he is a good king in many ways. And his confidence isn't exactly unfounded, lah. But yet it still leads to ruin, right? Because I think he just got, his nose was too high up. Like he was starting to get more arrogant, you know. Okay, next. Nemesis. What is it? The unavoidable fate of the hero, usually caused by his own hubris, arrogant pride over confidence. Okay, so nemesis isn't just bad luck. It's known. It's and it can be understood as bad luck, but it's not just bad luck. It's actually a mechanism by which the universe sort of balances itself. So sometimes you overreach, and then sometimes something pulls you back. You claim, and then when you claim too much for yourself, you lose everything. So when thinking about Oedipus, Nemesis isn't just the revelation of his crimes, it's the way in which things unfold. And it's through his own relentless investigation, his own insistence on truth. So he brings the bad luck, the bad luck upon himself. And that's the essence of tragedy. Do you understand? Okay, so it's also part of his fate, right? And he couldn't avoid it, but it was also him lah. It was him unfolding that fate, not anybody else, right? It was him. It was his doing. Okay, guys, honestly, to be honest, like I'm so tired of like talking about this like terms and trying to say it right. Now this is parapetia. What was the first one? Anagnorisis. Okay, anyway, focus. Now we have parapetia. Um, so in a tragedy, it's the sudden reversal of fortune from good to bad. It's the turn of the wheel of fortune. Okay, think of that. Think of that. Okay, not bad to good, but good to bad. In Oedipus Rex, this happens at the climax. It's when the messenger arrives from Corinth with what seems like good news that Polybus is dead, so Oedipus isn't going to kill his father. But then, ding ding ding, the revelation that Polybus wasn't his real father um, comes, and suddenly the good news becomes the worst possible news. Okay, so this flip, right? This flip is peripetia. It's not it's not gradual decline. Like it's not like one thing happens after another. Like gradually. No, it's like a plunge. It's like a like a gitu, and then things just change. So that's peripetia. Okay. Okay, now, okay, we're done with all the elements of, what makes up the, Greek tragedy. Let's talk a little bit about Oedipus Rex, the play itself by Sophocles. Honestly, I need a breather. This is actually like without you guys, it feels kind of boring, tbh, because I'm just like talking to myself. Anyway, okay, let's focus. Right. Now, the play was written around 429 BC. Okay, and it's considered by many, including Aristotle, the philosopher himself, the perfect tragedy, and that's why people still talk about it till this day, Oedipus Rex, and why when you talk about tragedy or like the classics, you just have to talk about Oedipus Rex. Okay, But what I want you to know is this is something interesting. Sophocles wasn't actually telling a new story. The Oedipus myth existed long before, and Homer mentions it in Odyssey. Okay, so alama, I always find this difficult to say. Aeschylus. Oh, Aeschylus. So Aeschylus wrote about it in um, Seven Against Thebes. So the audience already knew the ending. People knew about this myth. Okay, everybody knew about it. They knew the ending. But what makes Sophocles' version different from the others? What made it so powerful? It's because of how he actually structured the revelation, because of how he made the familiar feel unbearable. It's because of how he turned a known myth into a live emotional experience. I guess you can just say that he just tugs at your heartstrings back then. He really played with people's emotions, right? The myth of Oedipus. So the myth itself is about Oedipus, who was born to Laius and Jocasta of Thebes. And there was a prophecy that he would kill his father and marry his mother. His parents tried to prevent this by abandoning him, but then he is rescued, raised by another king. So one day he hears about this prophecy, he flees to avoid it, and when in fleeing, he fulfills it. He kills Elias at a crossroads. He then had to like solve a sphinx's riddle, which he succeeded, and then he became king, and then he marries Jocasta, his mother, and they have children. Yikes. Okay. And then the plague, plague. How do you say this? A plague. Why am I saying, okay, the plague? The plague, right? Okay, sorry. So the plague happens, it comes to Thebes, and everything just unravels. So that's like a short summary for you, right? I believe that you've read it, so no need to go deeper than that. Okay. Okay, what makes Oedipus Rex by Sophocles more tragic? Okay, jump. 5 seconds of just looking at this illustration that I found on the Greek world. I don't know where this is, but like let's just have a look. Okay, take a deep breath, guys. Release. No, let's just stare at it for 10 seconds. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Great. Okay, next. Why did I ask you to do that? I have no idea. I just wanted to look at it. Okay. Right. Next one. But I do hope that you found it beautiful, or at least interesting if you didn't find it beautiful. Okay. Wait. What did I say, Daddy? Oh yeah. So what makes Oedipus Rex by Sophocles more tragic? Again, like I said, it was a perfect tragedy, and mainly, apart from the things that I shared with you, it's also because, according to Aristotle, the perfect tragedy should hold to three unities. What are they? First of all, the perfect tragedy has to have um, a unity of time where the action takes place within about 24 hours. Uh, the perfect tragedy also has to have um, a unity of place where all the action should be limited to a single setting outside, and that's outside the palace at Thebes. And lastly, it has to have the unity of action where one single main plot focused on one main character and there are no subplots. Okay, just focus on one character. And in this case, Oedipus. Okay. And this concentration, I would say, is part of what makes the play so relentless, it's like there's no escape. No, meanwhile, in another part of Greece, just no, just like let's just zoom in to this one place, one time, one character. Okay, it's like zoom in. Shall we have a look at this diagram? I want you to look at this structure. So you have the incentive moment here, below left, here on the left side, incentive moment. You have, hold on, sorry, okay. So you have the incentive moment where the plague happens and Oedipus promises to find the killer, and then hold on, you have the steady climb where Tiresias accuses Oedipus, and then he quarrels with Creon, and then Jocasta tells the story of murder of Laius, and then she mentions of the three roads or the crossroads, which makes Oedipus suspicious. And for the Peripetia, this is when the messenger arrives from Corinth and tells him that Polybus is not Oedipus's real father. And so we get to the climax where the stories of the herdsman and messenger converge and Anagnorisis hits. Oedipus realizes who he is. Okay. And then you have the catastrophe where the play reports of Jocasta's suicide and Oedipus's self-blinding. And you also learn about the suffering with Oedipus in Creon, in his children, and his request for exile. And then you get to the resolution, the scene of suffering. Sorry. Then you get to the resolution where he exiles, he exits, he leaves, and then the plague ends. So this diagram here shows a sort of mathematical proof formula, and every step follows logically. And yet, even so, the conclusion is like is wild. It's wild, guys. Don't you think so? That when you were reading through the story, it's like, can it not get worse? But then it just gets worse. It's ridiculous, right? Okay, I don't want to talk about these other things. Um, but I will be sharing these things, and perhaps we will be doing some activities. We'll be doing the mass activity next week, hopefully, and so we might also have some discussions on Oedipus Rex. So I really hope that you could apa nama benda lah ni? Do some revision, okay, on this story. Okay, all right. Now that's all for today. I know it could have been, it might have been a bit heavy for you, but I still hope that it was interesting. What you learned for today. That is all for today. I will be asking you some questions just as a, what do you call that? Like a, not a revision. There'll be like a quiz, okay, for your attendance to make sure that you really studied, you listened to what was being taught to you, what was being shared with you, and yeah, do that, and that will count as your attendance. That's all for today. I will see you all next week, and so till then, stay safe, everybody. Okay. Okay. Bye. Bye bye. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye. Eh, tiba.